In August 2022, Companies House introduced the Register of Overseas Entities under the Economic Crime, Transparency and Enforcement Act, 2022. The Register of Overseas Entities is held by Companies House and requires overseas entities that own land or property in the UK to declare their beneficial owners or managing officers. Now let's dive into the registration requirements. The registration requirement is limited to overseas entities, such as a body corporate, partnership, or other entity outside the UK holding or planning to hold a qualifying estate. A qualifying estate is a freehold estate or leasehold estate for a term of more than 7 years that was acquired on or after the 1st of January 1999 in England and Wales, on or after the 8th of December 2014 in Scotland, and on or after the 1st of August 2022 in Northern Ireland. Overseas entities that wish to buy, sell, or transfer property or land in the UK will now be required to register with Companies House and disclose their beneficial owners or managing officers. Where no beneficial owners can be identified, details of managing officers are required. Let's understand who are actually the beneficial owners. The beneficial owners are people who have significant influence or control over the overseas entity. The law mandates overseas entities to identify the beneficial owners. The beneficial owner can be an individual, a legal entity such as a company, a government or public authority, trustee of trust, a member of a firm that is not a legal person, for example, partner in partnership. A person can be a beneficial owner if one of the following conditions are directly or indirectly met: holds more than 25% of the shares, exercises more than 25% of the voting rights, is able to appoint or remove a majority of the entity's board of directors. In addition to these, have the right to, or actually exercise, significant influence or control over the entity, are trustees of a trust, members of a partnership, unincorporated association, or other entity that fulfill one or more of the conditions above, and, where a person has the right to exercise or actually exercises significant influence or control over the activities of that trust or entity. We have understood the meaning of beneficial owners and conditions they need to meet. Now let's see who are managing officers. The managing officers could be the director, manager, or company secretary of the overseas entity. You can pause this screen to see the information type of the managing officer that should be provided, depending upon whether it is individual or corporate. We have covered the registration requirements, beneficial owners, and managing officers. Now we will cover verification checks, registration process, and what happens after registration. Verification checks on all beneficial owners and managing officers of an overseas entity must be completed by a UK-regulated agent before it can be registered. Verification checks must be completed no more than 3 months before the overseas entity is registered. Registration is a 3-step process. Step 1. Identification of all the beneficial owners or managing officers. Step 2. Verification of all the information pertaining to overseas entity and its beneficial owners or managing officers by UK-regulated agent authorized by the Companies House. Step 3. Filing application to the Companies House, requesting the registration of overseas entities. The best way to register the overseas entities is to appoint a UK-regulated agent approved by the Companies House. After registration, the overseas entity is issued an Overseas Entity ID and is required to annually update the register. It can file an application from removal if it is not, or is no longer, a registered owner of land or property. Let's discuss in details. 1. Issuance of Overseas Entity ID. The overseas entity and its beneficial owners and managing officers will be added to the Register of Overseas Entities. Overseas Entity ID will be issued, which must be given to the Land Registry whenever the entity buys, sells, or transfers land or property in the UK. 2. Annual Update Statement. All overseas entities on the register must file an update statement every year, which requires them to check and confirm that all the information about the overseas entity on the register is still correct and update anything that has changed. An update statement must be filed even if nothing has changed. The due date to file an update statement is within 1 year of the date the overseas entity was registered, or within a year of the previous update statement. 3. Removal from register. An application needs to be filed to the company's house for removal from the Register of Overseas Entities if it is not, or is no longer, a registered owner of land or property in the UK. Once an overseas entity has been removed, its Overseas Entity ID will no longer be valid. This means it cannot buy, sell, transfer, lease, or charge its property or land in the UK. You might be wondering what will happen if the overseas entity is registered late or fails to register. These are the consequences of late or non-filing. 1. Financial consequence. Company's House may impose a civil financial penalty when satisfied beyond reasonable doubt that an offense has been committed. Depending on the offense, this can be a fixed penalty, a daily rate penalty, a combination of both. 2. Prosecution of criminal activity. Company's House may refer cases to the Insolvency Service and other law enforcement agencies to be considered for prosecution. Prosecution will usually be considered for the most serious cases. Any officers of the entity who are responsible for committing the offense can also be prosecuted. 3. Restrictions on property transactions. All the real estate assets, both freehold and leasehold, located in the UK will be frozen. This means the overseas entity can't sell or transfer the properties and land they own in the UK. That concludes our overview of the Register of Overseas Entities and its requirements. UK Property Accountants is a UK-regulated agent authorized by the Company's House to verify and register overseas entities. We can assist you with the registration, annual update, and removal of overseas entity from the register as well. Compliance is your partner in success. Own the game with accurate records and transparent ownership.